Welcome back to Canadian Justice. We're doing a criminal law update with Kabir, Sharma, and Sina Shabestary of Titan Criminal Defence. Now, guys, I want to turn to a case that has shocked so many people in Toronto, the murder of a homeless man by what police have called a swarm of teenage girls. Kabir, what do we know about this case so far?
So what we know is that there were a group of about, I believe, 12 to 16-year-old girls. What I've heard from the police is that they've met up on social media. They were engaged in some type of criminal behavior at some point in downtown Toronto. They got into a bit of an argument or a tussle with a gentleman who is homeless and his companion. These young girls tried to steal this alcohol from the companion of this gentleman. He tried to jump in and stop this robbery from going on and was stabbed by perhaps one, perhaps more of these girls. And quite frankly, it is a very shocking and unexpected crime to happen in Toronto.
Sina, is there anything you want to add to that description? And one of the things that stands out to me is I've never even heard of this term swarming before. Is this like a new phenomenon? Because since hearing the report of this, I've heard of another swarming attack, this time by teen boys that took place in Alberta.
Absolutely. So I think what we need to know with respect to swarming is that, first of all, that's not a new phenomenon. It is something that in law we've recognized for quite some time, especially as an aggravating feature when it comes to sentence post-conviction. It aggravates the offense. What the viewers need to remember for a case like this is that, first and foremost, the offenders here are youth offenders, and therefore they are legislated and prosecuted under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, which is the YCJA, which operates with its own set of rules, which I'm sure we can cover later on. And also that given the swarming element and nature of this case, and given the fact that youth are involved, there's not a lot of information that we have. So even though it comes with a lot of shock and awe, and of course, not to trivialize the fact that there is a deceased individual, a deceased vulnerable individual in this case, in my view, it's entirely too early to really determine the degree of responsibility and culpability as between this group of youth offenders, or alleged offenders, rather.
Yeah, let's talk about the age of the accused here, because Kabir, the murder was committed by this group ranging, as you said, from I think 12 or 13 to 16. So they're governed by the Youth Criminal Justice Act. What type of impact could their young ages have on the outcome of the case? Particularly, is the procedure different? Are the sentences available different? What does this mean that they're so young?
So the procedure is different. The procedure that they're governed under, like Sina said, is the Youth Criminal Justice Act. The Crown can decide whether or not they'd like to prosecute these young girls as adults or as children. If they're prosecuted as children, they're subject to a maximum sentence of 3 years, even for first-degree murder. However, if they're prosecuted as adults, they're subject to a maximum of life imprisonment. One thing that the Youth Criminal Justice Act understands is that young people are of a diminished moral culpability, meaning that we understand that scientifically, young people's brains aren't as developed as adults, which affects the way that they think and the way that they act. So the Youth Criminal Justice Act influences that. However, that doesn't stop the Crown from prosecuting them as adults if they so decide.
And Sina, can you give any insight into what factors go into the Crown's decision making if they decide to proceed as adults or minors?
I think certainly the severity of the offense is one of the biggest things that they have to deal with. Secondly, and importantly, it's whether there is a level of recidivism involved and whether the young offender is an individual that has faced criminal charges in the past with some level of frequency. What is important to note, and it's in fact written in the preamble of the YCJA, is that a custodial sentence is always the last resort for any youth offenders for the reasons that Kabir just mentioned. and that rehabilitation, given the young age of youthful offenders, is at the forefront of the court's mind because they have the highest prospect of rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm. We've got to go to a commercial break now, but when we come back, I want to talk about the perceived rise in violent crime, and particularly in major cities in Canada. I'm sure you guys have a lot of insight into that as criminal lawyers. We will be right back.